Hi, this is Chris Hoy. Thank you for joining me on Create with Chris for this acrylic painting tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to easily paint this trendy, beautiful backgrounds with movement and flow. So let's get started. I wanted to share with you how quick and easy it is to create a beautiful background with movement and flow. I think one of the biggest differences between an average project or design and one that is impressive is what happens in the background. It can really change the whole mood of the project. This process that I'm going to show you is very simple, but there are several things that you need to keep in mind to have it come out and work perfectly. So I'm going to go through it from start to finish on the background. You can use this in any color combination, and I'll show you some of the different ones that I have created using different color palettes. So let's go ahead and get started. Started out with a surface, and I'm going to be doing the same colors that I used on this project, and they are just different shades of blue, and I have from light to very dark. I went from Whispering Turquoise, Victorian Blue, Prussian Blue to Payne's Gray. Now, one of the things that makes this project or this technique work so easily is to not overthink it. It needs to be a very simple process. A must-have is a larger brush. This is a 3/4 inch oval wash, and everything I use will be listed below and is available at my website. Very soft bristles, and I have found out with these soft bristles, it does not leave brush strokes or brush lines in the paint. Much easier to blend it together. It's a little stiffer than a mop, has more bounce in the bristles, but it lays the paint on very smoothly, almost kind of silky. So a big brush is a definite must-have. I went ahead and did base coat this a solid color. I base coated it white first and then laid a layer of the Whispering Turquoise in it. I said solid, but it just needs to be even. I think even is a bigger or a better description of the background. Nothing we do is going to be solid or heavy, so think light and fluffy. Another thing that is important when creating this technique is to work quickly, and I'm using a fair amount of water. Let me slide my palette over just a little bit. And I work from the outer edge toward the center and work quickly, because once the paint starts to set up, if you go back over it, it's going to dig in and lift, and then you get the splotches and the messes. Probably the biggest challenge with this technique is learning how much water to have on your brush and when to reload. And that just takes a couple tries. Once you get the hang of it, it's no different than line work or floating or shading or any of those other techniques. It's like, oh, that's a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Working from light to dark, so I'm going to squirt a little bit of this Victorian Blue, and there's several shades of, this is Deco Art Americana. There's several shades that I have used. Just, you need a medium shade. And I am going to work my brush into the paint. Now, before we do this, when I apply the paint, and I'll do it with a dry brush before we get into exactly how to do it, I'm not going to stay on the bristles. I'm going to use the flat of the brush, and I'm just going to kind of flip my wrist over, slide it across, slide it across, slide it across. If you use the chisel edge, you're just going to get straight lines. One of the reasons I like a filbert another reason. When I did this with a wash or a chisel shaped brush, when I did my slip and slap and turned it over and turned it over, I was always getting those straight lines. And I found out when I used a filbert, it eliminated that straight edge. So I'm going to load my brush up pretty well with this Victorian blue, working the paint into my bristles. I'm not just picking up some on the tips of my brush. I need to really work that in there. I want to load it up well. I'm going to work quickly and I'm going to blend it. And so when I start out, it's going to be pretty heavy. I don't want to end up with a line where I start out. So usually what I do, I'm going to start here and go this way and this way. See how quickly I'm going. And then I'll just go back around. And I'm not taking time to blend it in. Once I get that all on there, I just grab a little bit more water and blend it in. And I think what I'll do, see how it shows in the middle? I'm going to clean my brush out one more time and softly blend that together. Now, I'm not so much worried about how smooth it is. I just want to blend it. Although, if you look, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Remember, we're going to make the edges darker, but there are no sharp lines anywhere as it blends toward the center. It's light and dark. There may be some places on the edge that I have missed, but I want to apply this quickly and smoothly so that I get this nice variation from dark to light. Okay. So I'm going to let that dry. I've used a fair amount of water, but a little bit of paint, that's my motto, a little bit of paint makes a big difference. Now there's a big difference between this and this by far. However, it's always so much easier to add more paint than it is to go back in and lift some of that paint out of there. I can grab a little bit more of that Victorian blue if I think I need to blend it a little more, and just soften that down. And you can see as I add more, it's much easier to smooth out any of those brush strokes. However, I think those brush strokes add a lot of interest, so I don't want to eliminate them. And I don't want to go too heavy. I like this lightness that's in there. So I keep washing my brush out, slip slap. Just make sure you don't have any sharp edges or dead ends where the brush just stops and nothing blends. I blend the whole thing each time. Not too worried about like over here where it's light or on the edges where it's light. By the time we add our layers, this darkness will fill all of that in. So you just want to look on how it's blended toward the center. That's what will show. Give this another quick dry. You can keep adding layers until you're happy with it, but we still have 2 more layers to add. I don't want to lose that movement and that brush stroke effect that it has created. I think that is beautiful. This can be created using any color combination. It's just really fun to see what comes up with different colors. I cleaned my brush, probably really didn't need to. Going with Prussian blue, very powerful color. And need to make sure that it's mixed well. I have a lot of that extender in there that didn't get mixed in. So, by Prussian blue being a very powerful color. I don't need to load it as strongly on my brush, which means I will use more water than paint. It's very, I call this loose. I can see there's a lot of moisture in my brush. If I think it's too wet, I'll just lay it on a paper towel, let it draw out some of that moisture. You don't want it to run. I still want to be able to have control. Now with this, it's going to be a much stronger color and the application is going to be much more visible. And I think, because I don't want to have to clean up my table, I'm going to lay that down there. And again, using the side, the flat of the brush, slip, slap, slip, slap. Let that just lightly blend. Work quickly. And you can see how I kind of hit and skip, but I want to go around quickly so that I can keep going around and blending it in. Now once I add that all around, I'm going to grab some clean water and blend it toward the center. Each layer will enhance the layer below. Work quickly, work quickly. The brush is doing all the work because I'm using almost completely clean water here in the middle. I'm just getting a hint of coverage. I'm not going to go over anymore because if I keep going over, it's going to start lifting out because it's starting to tack up. So you can see how that has toned that down considerably. This is where patience comes in. Light layers of paint, let it dry, stop before it starts to lift. You can add extender to your paint, but I find that a little bit frustrating because it delays the drying time so much that it takes a long time to create that between layers. I'm not that patient. Loading my brush again with Prussian blue. I'll start on the outside, work quickly, work quickly, work quickly. Don't let it dry up on you. A little more water on my brush. It's much darker here. Get a little more water and just work that in. Just watch those edges so they are softly blended. Blend it to the center. I'm allowing the bottom half to be a little bit darker. Watch your brush strokes because you don't want your brush strokes going like same stroke like it's windy or raining. Always go over and back, over and back. Blend them out, but you can still see a lot of movement in there. Each layer I put on makes it a little more darker, but because this Prussian blue is such a very strong color, I'm really backing off on how much I apply at one time. This over here is a little bit lighter than this over there, so with this next layer I can kind of keep an eye on that. Honestly, I don't think for most compositions anybody's going to measure that, but if it's noticeable, with each layer you can kind of shift it around to cover more evenly. I have a really wet edge here. This is where I started out, where the paint was strongest. Because this is still wet, if I would go back to lay another layer on there, it's going to lift it back off. This is really starting to look pretty. Getting a little more Prussian blue. Just going to go back, bring that in just a little bit on that left side to kind of even that up. Softly brush toward the center, softly. Hardly have any paint on my brush, just water to kind of move it around. because it's dry, I can pull it in. I may want to do just a little bit more, but I think what I'll do at this point is to add a darker shading around the edge. To create that contrast. I'm using a heat tool. You can use a hair dryer. I like this one really well. Dries quickly, it's super quiet. And again, everything that I use is available on my website and will be listed below. If you have any comments or questions, please put those down below and I will be sure to answer you. Just going to pick up some Payne's Gray. And because I really, really like working with big brushes, to me it makes sense. If you have a big brush, you're going to have a smoother finish. It's going to go quicker and you're going to have more continuity. It just will look better. Dip my brush in the water base. I'm just going to pull out some of that moisture. Same deal, Payne's Gray is a hugely powerful color. So it doesn't take much. I just have the toe loaded and I'm going to start, excuse me, I'm going to start shading it around the outer edge. I don't do a straight float. I like to tap and pull. It just helps with that movement to kind of pull it in and blend it up. Let that brush just kind of smooth around those edges. Any areas that are not covered well, that I over here like missed, this is going to really pull that in nicely. And I never do one coat and call it finished unless I'm in love with it, because I know that if I add 2 or 3 layers of shading, I get a much more dramatic effect than one heavy solid float. And I'll give this a real quick dry. Look what a difference. I mean, this looks beautiful. I do have it a little bit heavier. I flipped it around, but this will be my bottom edge, so if I were to put something here, I could have like a tabletop or more weight at the bottom. And once I dry this, it starts to lighten up a little bit. You don't see as that heavy, dense Payne's Gray color. I want it just a little bit stronger. So I'm going to give it a good dry and add another layer around the outer edge. Make sure that at least this much of your brush is clean, because that will ensure that this shading is going to not have any back edge. If you start to get paint across the tip of your brush, just clean it out and give it a quick rinse. If your paint is dragging, you don't have enough moisture in the brush, you should be able to put this float on super quickly. What a huge difference that little bit of paint makes. It just really starts to glow. When you add that darkness around the outer edge, it creates a soft frame and a really dramatic effect. Let that just blend in there. I don't know if you can hear, but I'm almost just, I call it a tap pole float. Look how beautiful that is. Absolutely gorgeous. And that was not hard. From start to finish, you might have 15 minutes. Once you get the hang of this, I think the biggest length of time involved is letting it dry between layers. This is one that I created for fall, and it still has that nice light background. The edges are a little bit darker. The only difference, I did use a little bit of texture, add a little bit of texture around the outer edges instead of shading it super dark. I wanted the pumpkin to be the star, so I just let that fade out and then added this texture with a palette knife. This is another blue one, but this is using different shades of blue, much darker. This is more of a turquoise blue. You can see the difference. But what a great technique to use on a snow globe, a crystal ball, anything where you have that, want that to look round and bring your focus toward the center. This one is using tans, and it's a little more rustic, maybe country, a different effect. I did add stamping in the background. You can use stenciling. Design in the background, as opposed to a flat background, will bring any design from average to impressive very, very quickly. You can use the same design, just ramp up that background, and the results are amazing. This one I created that same look with the moon, and I let the top left be brighter, and I just kind of slap-slapped and brought it in from the bottom and the right side so that it created that look of roundness and brightness very easily. Still use that big brush. It's wonderful. This one is a video I did. So if you haven't checked out my other videos, this one is a free class that's on my channel. Please be sure to look at my other videos, and if you have any questions or comments, let me know. Click this like and subscribe box because that does help me out. But look how this goes from a kind of a dusty teal down to a green. Love the way this turned out. This is another one that's super fun. And this goes from a really bright, kind of a teal, down to a green. And I let that background kind of be a buffer between the two colors. And I thought that would be fun to show you how that works. So what I'm going to do is create another one very quickly. And I'm going to start out with the teal, which is the Whispering Turquoise. I'm not going to base coat it. I'm just going to let this color start at the top and just kind of slap it in there, very thin. Down here I want to blend it out. I'm just going to lighten that down just a little bit. Grab a little bit of green. You think, oh, that looks kind of messy. I did not clean my brush. I should bring this over here so you can see. Did not clean my brush. I'm just getting a little more of the foliage green. And I'm going to start at the bottom and slap it. Still a little bit wet, so I'm kind of letting those colors blend together. How fun is that? Give this a quick dry. And you might think that's kind of messy. This is where the patience comes in and the multiple layers. Just remember, a little bit of paint makes a big difference. And I think it's so easy to get heavy-handed with the paint and kind of jump off with a more solid coverage, because that's what we've been doing for years. Just try something different. I've got a little wet spot here and a little wet spot here. What will happen if I don't dry these couple wet spots, when I put my next layer on, it's going to pick it up and lift it off. Let it dry. I had a green in my brush last, so I'm just going to clean that out, because I'm going to do the same process. Start at the top, using the flat of my brush, not the chisel edge. And just slip slap. I may slow the camera down so you can see. Always fade it out to a soft edge. I clean my brush, just bring this down, pull it into the green. Pick up some green, start at the bottom, a little more water. As I go up, I kind of like a diagonal blend. Just clean my brush and blend those two together. Want to add just a little bit of a stronger teal turquoise color in the top. Loading my brush with that stronger color. Don't want this to be too dark, but I'm going to pull it down. And I don't want those sharp edges, so I'll clean my brush and soften that in. Light touch, just a very light touch. I could have went a little darker, but that's okay. I'd rather it have too little than too much. Picking up Plantation Pine. Want to darken this bottom. I'll pull that up this side just a little bit more. A little more darkness down in the bottom. Blend it in, blend it in, blend it in. Softly. I don't want to bring that darkness too far up. Very light touch. If you have a heavy touch, you'll go in and dig those colors back out. Light touch, do it and then stop. I have a little bit of a light spot there. Now is not the time to touch it up. Now, if I want to go back and darken these even a little bit more, I can go back with my angle brush. Just pick up a little bit. This is a darker tropical blue. I'm just going to make that a little bit stronger. And you can see what a difference that makes, just pulling that little bit in. I'm not going to bring that too far down. Add a little bit over here. I like when the edges are a little bit not perfectly symmetrical. I think that looks a little bit more interesting. So I pulled it down just a little bit on this side and down about 3/4 on this side. Just play around with it. You can get some really nice effects. Sticking with the Plantation Pine. I like that color. I did not have much on here, so when I add this, it should really enhance it, make it a little bit stronger. Bring that up, kind of blend it together, pulls them, gives that look of continuity. But I want it stronger down here. Tap and pull and just let it kind of have that look of being brushed on. I'm using the clean part of my brush to blend it out. Reload. It's still very wet. I can move it a long way. I'm going to pull that all the way up as far as I want. I don't want a green sky, but I can pull it up and soften it. Use the clean part of the brush to mop it around. Love how that looks. Just a fun way to add different colors. If I think this needs to be blended a little bit more, I kind of see a scoop here. Always let it dry first, because what you see is not always how it's going to dry. Everything can be fixed. There's nothing that is awful that cannot be fixed. Just going to get my 3/4 inch angle or oval. Pick a little bit of paint on it. And I can go back and soften that in very easily. See how I can blend that softness? And just bring it up. And boom, I'm finished. And it looks very nicely filled in. A little bit of paint. I did not use a lot. I can add more over here if I think it needs it. Because I have such a small hint of paint on my brush, it can be blended in quickly, easily, and very smoothly. If I think my sky is a little choppy, I can do the same thing up there. Just pick up a little more of Whispering Turquoise. I probably should have put 2 coats on. And just blend that out. It's going to smooth it down. Very, very workable. I love how it turned out on this particular piece. I think it looks so, and you think about if I just had a plain background, what a difference that would have made. Look how it blends very softly. I have green that goes up and the blue that comes down, but there are different shades of blues and different shades of greens that make that blend together very, very nicely. Here's another fun piece that I did for Halloween with the different shades of blue. I use this often. I think it adds so much impact. Just makes a huge difference. So if you are looking for a technique to create in the background that will make any dated project, bring it up to date, give it a fresh new look, add impressive results, this is a super fun technique. All you need are different shades of paint, light layers when you apply it, big brushes. Don't go with those little brushes, go with big brushes so that you can cover the area quickly and blend them in so you have plenty of bristle. Load it up well so you don't have to reload, work quickly. And remember, a little bit of paint makes a big difference. I hope you enjoyed this technique and give it a try. If you have any questions or comments, please list them below. Everything I do use is available on my website. Be sure to check out my other videos, like and subscribe to my channel. Hope you learned a few new tips, tricks, and techniques to make your painting life a little easier and a lot more fun. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to our next adventure together.